right, so for the dress, you've got your skirt panels cut out here. There should be 2. Lay them out right sides together. This particular print can go both ways. Things are upside down and right side up, so it doesn't matter too much which way they go, but if you have a one-way print, then make sure that obviously both panels are facing the same direction. I like to clip the ends of mine just so they don't slide. And then you just serge down the short sides, flip it over and do the other side. Your skirt. Just one big cylinder. Set that aside. And then for the bodice, I take my main pieces, lay back on top of the front, right sides together, so the shoulder seams. Now you've got your main. Do the same for your lining. Right sides together. Sew the shoulder seams. And now to put the lining and the main together, lay one of them down. So I've got the lining right side up. Then take your main or your other piece, make sure the back lines up with the back, the front on the front, right sides together. I like to clip my shoulder seams so that they line up nicely. And then I also put a clip in the middle here on the front and the back, just so it stays nice for me while I sew, but some people can probably choose not to clip. It's totally up to you. It just helps me so that I don't have to readjust a whole bunch while I'm serging. So now I've got the lining, this is the wrong side, the main, this is the wrong side, and the right sides are together. And then I'm going to serge around like the neckline here. I like to start kind of on the side here at the down scoop of the back, just because I like to keep the front of the chest like as clean as possible. So if there is any like little you know, little nub or something that happens from the start area or the end area, at least it's like in a non-noticeable spot. I always make sure that my seams are lying flat when I serge them so that it's a nice finish. And usually on a seam I have one laying this way and one laying this way, just so it's not super bulky. And then to finish, just overlap about an inch. And then I always, where are we? I always pull these little end threads tight to make a little knot there, just so it doesn't continue to unravel to that knot point for the customer. And then I just snip that. So here's what you have. And then flip it right side out through the neckline. So that's what you've got. There's your front, there's your back. Typically I like to press it just so it's a nice flat, smooth finish, but I'm just going to keep serging here to show you. So this is where it might get a little bit tricky and difficult to explain, so I'm going to do this really slowly about how we finish the bodice to get, like the arms, to get a nice smooth finish here with the lining. I'm just going to see if I can angle this down. There. So lay it flat. And then the one closest to you, peel it apart. So kind of peel it apart, flip the lining to the back. So your seam is right here. This is your lining, obviously. There we go. So it's peeled apart there, and then take the top one together, roll it up. So it's rolled, and then just kind of place it on the seam here, and then fold the back, the lining, to the main, match up your seams, clip, and then same, so take your lining piece from the back, kind of roll these out of the way, fold it over, and clip at the arm. And same with the last piece here. Take the last piece, roll it over, fold these middle ones out of the way, and fold it over like this. So now they're kind of just all tucked in together. You've got your back side of your main, the back of your lining, and it's kind of sandwiched together with the other side tucked in here. And then you're going to serge the arm here. And when you serge, just make sure the stuff in the middle is out of the way enough so that you're not serging over top of that inside stuff. When you're done, it should look like this. And then you're gonna peel apart from the bottom and pull this inside part out. And gently, because it can get a little bit bulky up by the seam, but just keep pulling and it'll pop out. So then you've got one side done, nice and neat, and then just do it for the other side. So flip it over, peel it apart, flip the lining back, roll up the top, take the lining, right sides together with the main piece, clip at the seam, fold this out of the way, lining over, and then same as back here, push that out of the way and fold it over. And then same thing, you're going to serge this top edge here. And that side's done. Again, at the bottom here, pull it apart, pull the other side through gently. Sometimes you have to straighten things out a bit over here. And then you've got your bodice almost done. This is the mane. And then you've got your lining. And then to finish off the bodice, you take the right sides together and clip them like this, and then sew down this top edge. Again, I always like to clip my seams just to make sure they line up nice. So you've got that, flip it over, do the other side. So this is what it looks like. You've got your two sides again, sandwich it together. Then you're going to serge that top edge. So that's done, and then you just fold it so the right sides are up. There's your finished bodice. So then next step, take your skirt, gather the top. I use my regular machine and I just do a gathering stitch or basting stitch around the top, and then I pull it until it's about the length that I need, and then serge the bodice onto your skirt, and you're done. So I just did my basting stitch for the gathering. I try and start it near a seam just so it's not right in the front or the back. It's a little bit easier to hide if anything kind of goes wrong there. I do it about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, just so that when I serge the skirt to the bodice, I kind of just serge right over that and this doesn't show anymore, because I serge at about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So yeah, so I'm gonna just gather that up. I just pull one of the strings and just keep gathering that skirt up until it's nice and gathered. So once the skirt is gathered up quite nicely, I flip it inside out. So it looks like that. I take my bodice and I just kind of measure roughly, you know, if I'm in the ballpark. My skirt is quite a bit shorter than my bodice here, so I just kind of pull it out a little bit until it matches, and then have the seams so it's still symmetrical on both sides. And then once it's kind of in the ballpark, take your bodice right side out like it should, put it inside your skirt. Make sure your seams of your lining and your main are lined up nicely. Everything sits nice and flat. And then line it up with your skirt seam. I try and like kind of reduce the gathering right on the sides there, so it's not super bunchy and bulky. And then I pin it right on the seam or clip. And then I do the same to the other one. So seams lined up, tuck it inside your skirt, line it up with the skirt seam, seams together, clip. And then you can see I still have quite a bit of slack in the bodice here, so I can stretch out my skirt a little bit more so it matches a little bit more nicely. I'm a little bit cautious because it's always easier to let it out than gather it back in. And then I just start pinning. So yeah, just clip as I go. Make sure your lining and your main are both still lining up nicely as well here. So all 3 layers should be lined up nicely. And I just kind of clip, I don't know, maybe 3 times. Make sure my gathers are still looking nice and even. You don't want them too bunched up and too sparse in another area, so just be careful with that. So now it's pinned and lined up nicely. I do the other side. This fabric tends to roll quite a bit more than other ones I've dealt with, so it can be a little bit irritating to work with, but it's so soft and such a nice fabric. So I'll put probably a couple more pins in here, a couple more clips. And then here where the gathers started and ended, I take all my threads, pull them out, and then I just kind of pull them. They tend to get really loose, so I always pull them tighter, and then I'll clip right there to try and keep the gather in there. And then I'll usually pin close by as well, just to keep it in place. If it does come undone a little bit, at least I still have a bit of room to work with. And then as I serge, I kind of like will bunch it up with my fingers a little bit. And then I serge around the waist. I use 3/8 seam allowance, just so we cover up that basting stitch. And I always try and start, so here's my, where I started the basting stitch. I always try and go on the opposite side, just so I have a bit of wiggle room at the end to adjust things if necessary. Just as you go, make sure everything is still laying flat, everything's lined up. You're not catching any of the bodice fabric. Sometimes it gets folded in and then you can accidentally serge it on top. So just make sure everything's out of the way and smooth and neat when you sew. And now I'm coming to where I started my basting stitch. So I'll remove the clip and then I'll just kind of like bunch up manually right now with my fingers just to get a bit of a gather in there. And then same thing when you're doing the round, just go over it by about 1 inch. So it looks kind of like that when I'm finished. Pull the threads tight. Clip. Here's your dress. And then I'll finish it off by hemming the bottom here. But other than that, it should be good.